Vincent Sterling stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Manhattan penthouse office, watching the city lights flicker like stars below. At 32, he commanded one of the most powerful tech empires in the world, but tonight felt different. His reflection showed a man who had everything yet felt empty inside. His assistant knocked softly before entering. "Mr. Sterling, your father is here to see you." Theodore Sterling walked in without waiting for permission, his silver hair and expensive suit radiating the kind of power that built empires. At 70, he still moved with the confidence of a man who had never lost a battle. "Son, we need to talk." Theodore's voice carried the weight of decades in boardrooms, where fortunes were made and destroyed. Vincent turned from the window, already sensing trouble. "If this is about the Morrison account, I already told you this is about our survival." Theodore placed a thick folder on the desk. "Blackstone Industries is planning a hostile takeover. They have the backing and the votes to destroy everything we've built." Vincent's jaw tightened. Blackstone Industries was their biggest competitor, led by ruthless corporate raiders who specialized in tearing apart successful companies. "How long do we have?" 6 months, maybe less. Theodore opened the folder, revealing financial documents and legal papers. "Unless we secure the Bennett family investment. They control enough shares to block any takeover attempt, so we make them an offer they can't refuse." Theodore's smile was cold. "We already did. They want something more valuable than money. They want their daughter married into our family." Words hit Vincent like a physical blow. "Marriage. Can't be serious." Rosalie Bennett is 26, educated, and comes from good stock. Her father controls a fortune in real estate and tech investments. This marriage would secure our company and create the most powerful business alliance on the East Coast. Vincent paced to his bar, pouring himself 3 fingers of whiskey. "I won't do it. I won't sell my life for the company." "Really? Then enjoy watching everything your grandfather built crumble while you chase socialites and party girls." The reference to Sophia Whitmore hung in the air between them. Vincent's relationship with the stunning blonde heiress had been the subject of tabloid speculation for months. "Sophia loves me for who I am, not what I can do for her business interests." Theodore laughed bitterly. "Sophia Whitmore has been seen with 3 different wealthy men this month alone. My investigators have photos if you'd like to see them." "Lying, am I?" "Check your phone. She's currently dining at La Bernardine with Marcus Ashford, the oil heir who just inherited $2 billion. Vincent's phone confirmed his father's words. Social media photos showed Sophia laughing intimately with another man, wearing the diamond bracelet Vincent had given her just last week. "The Bennett girl is different," Theodore continued, pressing his advantage. "She's not interested in our money. She has her own successful architecture firm and turned down our first 3 offers to meet you." The first meeting 2 days later, Vincent found himself in the elegant dining room of the plaza, waiting for a woman he'd never met but was expected to marry. He'd spent the morning researching Rosalie Bennett online, finding impressive credentials, but few personal photos. She arrived precisely on time, and Vincent's breath caught in his throat. Rosalie Bennett was beautiful in a way that seemed effortless and natural. Her dark hair was pulled back simply, and her green eyes held intelligence and wariness in equal measure. She wore a navy dress that was expensive but understated, showing class without trying to impress. "Mr. Sterling." Her voice was warm but professional as she extended her hand. "Miss Bennett, thank you for agreeing to this meeting." They sat across from each other, the weight of their family's expectations settling between them like an unwelcome guest. "I assume you know why we're here," Vincent began, trying to maintain his usual corporate confidence. "Our fathers have decided that my hand in marriage is worth more than stock options." Rosalie's directness surprised him. "They believe a wedding ring will solve both our family's business problems." "And what do you think?" She studied him carefully before answering. "Why? Think this is the most expensive arranged marriage in modern history. But I also think we're both intelligent enough to make the best of an impossible situation." Vincent found himself impressed, despite his resentment. This woman wasn't the gold-digging social climber he'd expected. "You don't seem particularly enthusiastic about marrying into the Sterling fortune." "Would I be?" "Money doesn't buy happiness, Mr. Sterling. It just buys better problems." "Then why agree to this?" Rosalie's mask slipped slightly, revealing vulnerability beneath her composed exterior. Because my sister Elena needs surgery that our insurance won't cover. Because my father's construction company is 3 months from bankruptcy. Because sometimes we do things we don't want to do for people we love. Her honesty made Vincent feel ashamed of his own selfish motivations. I'm sorry I didn't know about your sister. Why would you? We're strangers, being forced to play house for our families. Benefit. They ate in relative silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Vincent found himself watching Rosalie, noting the graceful way she moved, the kindness in her eyes when she spoke to the waiter, the strength in her voice when she discussed her architectural projects. "What kind of marriage are you expecting?" he asked finally. "A practical one. We fulfill our obligations to our families, make public appearances when necessary, and otherwise live separate lives. I have no interest in being arm candy for a man who's in love with someone else." The mention of Sophia stung because it was true. "You seem to have thought this through." "I'm an architect, Mr. Sterling. I plan everything carefully before I build." Proposal a week later, Vincent arrived at Rosalie's architectural firm in Soho. The converted warehouse space was filled with blueprints, scale models, and the organized chaos of creative minds at work. He found her reviewing plans at a drafting table, completely absorbed in her work. "Miss Bennett?" She looked up, surprise flickering across her face. "Mr. Sterling, what brings you here?" "I wanted to see where you work. To understand who you are beyond our family's business arrangements." Rosalie gestured around the space. "This is my real life. These buildings, these designs. This is what matters to me." Vincent studied the blueprints spread before her. "The community center in Brooklyn? How did you know?" "I make it my business to know about my associates." "You're donating your services to build affordable housing. Architecture should serve people, not just profit margins." Her passion was evident in every word, and Vincent found himself genuinely curious about her work. "Show me." For the next hour, Rosalie walked him through her projects. Her eyes lit up as she described sustainable design principles and community impact. Vincent watched her transform from the cautious woman he'd met at dinner into someone vibrant and alive. "You love this," he observed, "more than anything. This work gives my life meaning, even more than the prospect of marrying a billionaire." Laughed, a sound that was surprisingly musical, especially more than that. Vincent pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. "Rosalie Bennett, will you marry me?" She stared at the enormous diamond ring, her face unreadable. "Is this the part where I'm supposed to swoon with gratitude? This is the part where—" "We make this arrangement official, very romantic." But she held out her hand, allowing him to slide the ring onto her finger. "When? 6 weeks. My father wants the merger completed before Blackstone can make their move." Rosalie twisted the ring on her finger, the diamond catching the light. 6 weeks to plan a wedding that will convince the world we're madly in love? Can you do it?" "Very good at my job, Mr. Sterling, and apparently my new job is being your wife." The engagement announcement sent shockwaves through New York society. Business journalists scrambled to understand the implications, while society columnists speculated about the romance between the tech billionaire and the unknown architect. Vincent threw himself into work, trying to ignore the constant media attention. But he couldn't ignore Sophia's increasingly desperate attempts to contact him. She appeared at his office unannounced, looking stunning in a red dress that left little to the imagination. "Darling, we need to talk about this ridiculous engagement." "There's nothing to discuss, Sophia. I'm getting married." "To some nobody architect, Vincent. You can't be serious." "We belong together, do we?" "Because according to my sources, you've been belonging to quite a few men lately." Sophia's perfect facade cracked slightly. "Those were business dinners. You know how important networking is in my family's social circles? Business dinners that end at midnight in hotel rooms. You're being paranoid. I love you, Vincent. Only you." But her words rang hollow now. Vincent found himself comparing Sophia's calculated beauty to Rosalie's natural grace, her desperate clinging to Rosalie's quiet dignity. "The engagement stands, Sophia. I suggest you find someone else to finance your lifestyle." Meanwhile, Rosalie threw herself into wedding planning with the same precision she brought to architectural projects. She met with caterers, florists, and designers creating the perfect society wedding while maintaining emotional distance from the groom. Alina, her younger sister, watched her preparations with concern. "Rosie, are you sure about this? You don't love him?" "Love is a luxury I can't afford right now. This marriage will save Dad's company and pay for your surgery. That's enough. But what about your happiness?" Rosalie looked at her engagement ring, the diamond feeling heavy on her finger. Happiness is overrated. Security is more important. But even as she said the words, she found herself thinking about Vincent Sterling more than she wanted to admit. There had been moments during their meetings when she glimpsed something deeper. Beneath his cold exterior, a loneliness that matched her own, perhaps. The wedding preparations, as the wedding date approached. Vincent and Rosalie fell into a routine of public appearances and private distance. They attended charity galas and business functions, playing the part of the happy couple while remaining strangers at the final dress fitting. Rosalie stood before the mirror in her wedding gown, a creation of silk and lace that cost more than most people's cars. The dress was beautiful, but she felt like she was wearing a costume for a role she'd never auditioned for. "You look stunning," the designer gushed. "Yeah, Mr. Sterling's a very lucky man." But Rosalie wondered who was really lucky in this arrangement. Vincent was getting a wife to secure his business empire. She was getting financial security for her family. Neither was getting love. The rehearsal dinner was held at the Sterling family estate in the Hamptons. Rosalie met Vincent's extended family for the first time, navigating the complex social dynamics of old money and older grudges. She handled each introduction with grace, but Vincent noticed the slight tension in her shoulders, the way she gripped her champagne glass just a little too tightly. "Nervous?" he asked during a quiet moment on the terrace. "Terrified," she admitted. "Your family thinks I'm a gold digger who trapped their precious heir. My family thinks a lot of things that aren't true, and what do you think?" Vincent studied her face in the moonlight, noting the vulnerability she tried so hard to hide. "I think you're the strongest person I've ever met. I think tomorrow changes everything for both of us, for better or worse. I guess we'll find out." As the evening ended and guests departed, Vincent and Rosalie stood together on the terrace, looking out at the dark ocean. Tomorrow they would be husband and wife, bound together by legal documents and family obligations. Neither spoke of the strange connection growing between them, the way their conversations had become easier, or natural. The wedding was less than 12 hours away. Both bride and groom wondered what their marriage would really become once. The camera stopped rolling, and the guests went home. Neither could have predicted that their business arrangement was about to become something much more dangerous and beautiful than either had dared to hope. The Cathedral of St. John the Divine had never hosted a more spectacular wedding. 500 of New York's elite filled the Gothic sanctuary, their whispers echoing off the stone walls as they awaited the ceremony. That would unite two of the city's most powerful families. Vincent stood at the altar in his custom Tom Ford tuxedo, his hands steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to do. Beside him, his best man, James Hartwell, offered quiet support, while photographers captured every moment for the society pages. The organ's triumphant notes filled the cathedral. As Rosalie appeared at the entrance, Vincent's breath caught in his throat. She was radiant in her silken lace gown, moving down the aisle with quiet grace that commanded attention without demanding it. Her veil trailed behind her like a cloud, and the cathedral lights caught the subtle beating on her dress, making her seem to glow from within. But it was her eyes that held him captive. Green as emeralds, they met his across the distance with a mixture of nervousness and determination. In that moment, Vincent forgot about business mergers and family obligations. He saw only the woman walking toward him, about to become his wife. Ceremony passed in a blur of traditional vows and ancient rituals. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, Vincent's kiss was gentle, almost reverent. For the cameras, he told himself, but his heart knew better. The reception at the plaza was a masterpiece of elegance and excess. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbows across the ballroom while guests dined on courses prepared by world-renowned chefs. Vincent and Rosalie moved through their roles perfectly, dancing together, accepting congratulations, playing the part of the devoted couple. But beneath the surface, Tension simmered. Sophia's presence at the reception had been unavoidable. Given her family's social standing, she watched from across the room like a predator studying her prey, her red dress a slash of color among the pastels. "Your ex-girlfriend is staring," Rosalie murmured during their first dance. "She'll get over it," Vincent replied, his hand warm against her back. "Will you?" The question caught him off guard. He looked down at his new wife, noting the way the ballroom lights played across her face, highlighting cheekbones that belonged in Renaissance paintings. "I'm beginning to think I already have." A honeymoon suite. Hours later, they stood in the doorway of the plaza's honeymoon suite. The staff had outdone themselves with rose petals, champagne, and candlelight that transformed the space into something from a fairy tale. But the romantic setting only emphasized the awkwardness between them. "It's beautiful," Rosalie said softly, stepping into the room. "The best money can buy," Vincent replied, immediately regretting his cynical tone. Rosalie turned to face him, still wearing her wedding gown, but having removed her veil and jewelry. Her hair fell in dark waves around her shoulders, and Vincent found himself mesmerized by the sight. "We should talk about expectations," she said practically, "about how this marriage will work." "What do you mean?" "Sleeping arrangements, public appearances, the boundaries of our arrangement." Vincent loosened his tie, buying time to think. All day he'd been telling himself this was still just business, but seeing Rosalie in their honeymoon suite, her beauty, enhanced by vulnerability, made it impossible to maintain that fiction. "The suite has a sitting room," he said finally. "I can sleep on the couch, Vincent." Her use of his first name sent an unexpected thrill through him. "We're married now. We don't have to pretend when we're alone." "Pretend what?" "Isn't something happening between us?" Her directness left him speechless. All evening he'd felt it too, the growing connection that had nothing to do with their family's business arrangements, the way she'd smiled at him during their first dance, the comfortable silence they'd shared during dinner, the electricity that sparked every time they touched. "Rosalie, I don't want you to feel obligated. I don't." She stepped closer, close, enough that he could smell her perfume, something floral and feminine that made his head spin. "Do you want me to feel obligated?" "No, God, no." "Then stop thinking about obligations and business arrangements. For tonight, can we just be Vincent and Rosalie? Two people who chose to spend their lives together." Her words broke something loose inside him. All the walls he'd built, all the careful emotional distance he'd maintained, crumbled in the face of her honesty. "You're beautiful," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "So beautiful it takes my breath away." "Then why do you look so sad?" "I never expected this. Never expected you." The awakening their first kiss as husband and wife was different from the chaste peck they'd shared at the altar. This was real, deep, filled with all the longing they'd been denying for weeks. Vincent's hands tangled in her hair, while Rosalie's fingers worked at the buttons of his shirt. "Are you sure?" he whispered against her lips. It'd never been more sure of anything. He lifted her in his arms, carrying her to the bedroom where rose petals covered the silk sheets. With gentle hands, he helped her out of her wedding gown, treating the expensive fabric with reverence before tossing it aside to focus entirely on the woman beneath. Rosalie, its perfection in candlelight, her skin like porcelain, her curves exactly where he wanted to touch. But it was her eyes that undid him completely, the trust and desire he saw there making his chest tight with emotion. "I've wanted this," she admitted softly. "Wanted you. Even when I told myself it was just business. So have I from that first day in the restaurant. You've been under my skin." Their lovemaking was tender and passionate by turns, each touch a revelation, each kiss a promise. Vincent had been with beautiful women before, but nothing had prepared him for the completeness he felt with Rosalie. She gave herself to him without reservation, and he found himself doing the same, walls crumbling with each shared breath. Afterward, they lay tangled in the silk sheets, her head on his chest while he stroked her hair. The candles had burned low, casting dancing shadows on the walls. "This changes things," Rosalie said softly. "Does it scare you?" "Terrifies me. I wasn't supposed to fall for you? Fall for me?" Vincent's heart stopped. She raised her head to look at him, her eyes serious. "I think I'm falling in love with my husband. How's that for unexpected?" completely terrifying and absolutely perfect. He kissed her again, deeper this time, and they made love once more as the city slept around them. When dawn finally crept through the windows, they were still wrapped in each other's arms, both having discovered that their arranged marriage had become something neither had dared to hope for. Vincent woke first, watching Rosalie sleep in the morning light. Her face was peaceful, younger-looking without the careful composure she wore in public. Dark lashes fanned across her cheeks, and her lips were still slightly swollen from his kisses. The reality of what had happened hit him like a cold shower. He'd fallen for his arranged wife completely and utterly. The woman he'd expected to tolerate had become someone he couldn't imagine living without. But with dawn came responsibilities and the weight of the real world. His phone buzzed with messages from his father, business partners, and the media. The honeymoon was over before it had truly begun. Rosalie stirred, opening her eyes slowly. When she saw him watching her, she smiled, a radiant expression that made his heart skip. "Good morning, husband. Good morning, wife." The words felt natural, right, in a way that surprised them both. Vincent leaned down to kiss her, but the spell was broken by his phone ringing insistently. "Work?" Rosalie asked, though she already knew the answer. "Crisis at the Singapore office. I have to take this." As Vincent dealt with the business emergency, Rosalie watched him transform from tender lover back into corporate warrior. His voice became clipped and professional, his body language shifting to project authority and control. When he finally hung up, the magic of their wedding night felt distant. "I have to fly to Singapore," he said, without looking at her. "The deal we've been working on for 6 months is falling apart. How long will you be gone?" "A week, maybe 2. Rosalie pulled the sheet around herself, suddenly feeling exposed. "Of course, business comes first." "Rosalie, this isn't what I want, isn't it? You got what you needed from this marriage. Your father's company is safe. The merger is complete. Now you can go back to your real life. That's not fair, isn't it? Last night was beautiful, Vincent, but we both know it doesn't change the fundamental reality of our situation." Vincent felt the distance growing between them and didn't know how to bridge it. The businessman in him understood the necessity of the Singapore trip, but the man who'd fallen for his wife wanted to stay and fight for what they'd found together. When you get back, we'll figure out how to be married," Rosalie said quietly. But let's not pretend last night turned our arrangement into a fairy tale." The departure 2 hours later, Vincent's driver was loading luggage. While he stood in the suite's doorway, reluctant to leave, Rosalie had dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, looking younger and more vulnerable than he'd ever seen her. "I'll call you," he promised, "if you have time between meetings." "Rosalie, please. Last night meant everything to me." "Did it?" "Because it feels like you're running away." The accusation stung because it held a grain of truth. The intensity of his feelings for her terrified him, and throwing himself into work was a familiar escape. "Not running away. I'm saving the deal that will secure our future." "Whose future, Vincent? Yours or ours?" Before he could answer, James appeared in the doorway. "Vincent, we need to leave now if you're going to make the flight." Vincent kissed Rosalie goodbye, a kiss that tasted of promises and regrets in equal measure. "I'll be back as soon as I can." "I'll be here," she replied. But her tone suggested she wasn't sure that was a good thing, as the elevator doors closed between them. Both felt the fragile connection they'd built beginning to strain. Vincent stared at his reflection in the polished metal, wondering if he was making the biggest mistake of his life. Rosalie returned to the empty suite. Now stripped of its romantic decorations, she picked up her wedding dress from where it lay draped over a chair. Holding the expensive fabric against her chest as tears she'd been holding back finally fell. One night had changed everything between them. But whether that change would survive, the pressures of their separate worlds remained to be seen. Love might have awakened between them, but they were about to learn that keeping love alive required more than passion and good intentions. Vincent's Singapore trip stretched from 1 week to 3 as crisis after crisis demanded his attention. The 12-hour time difference made communication with Rosalie difficult, and their conversations became increasingly strained and infrequent. What had started as daily calls dwindled to brief text messages filled more with business updates than personal connection. In his luxury hotel suite overlooking Marina Bay, Vincent worked 18-hour days, trying to salvage the deal while ignoring the growing ache in his chest. He missed Rosalie more than he'd thought possible, but every time he considered cutting the trip short, another emergency arose. Meanwhile, back in New York, Rosalie threw herself into her architectural work, designing a new community center for underprivileged children. She told herself she was fine, that she'd expected exactly this kind of abandonment. But Alina saw through her brave facade. "He's been gone 3 weeks, Rosie. When was the last time you actually talked to him? He's busy saving his empire." That's what billionaires do, and what do wives do? Pine away while their husbands conquer the world? Rosalie looked up from her blueprints, exhaustion evident in her green eyes. Wives in arranged marriages make the best of their situation. But even as she said it, she remembered their wedding night, the tenderness in Vincent's touch, the way he'd looked at her like she was the most precious thing in his world. Had all of that been an illusion born of champagne and romantic lighting? Her question was answered when gossip photos surfaced online showing Vincent at a Singapore nightclub with a group of business associates and several beautiful local women. The images were innocent enough, just networking and entertainment. They felt like daggers to Rosalie's heart. Sophia, who had been watching and waiting for exactly this kind of opportunity, appeared at Rosalie's office unannounced. "Poor dear," Sophia purred. Her red lips curved in a sympathetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I heard about Vincent's Singapore adventures. Men like him, they can't help themselves when they travel." "What do you want, Sophia? To offer some friendly advice?" "Vincent and I have history, real history. What you two have is just a business arrangement dressed up with pretty words." Rosalie's hands stilled on her drafting table. "Our marriage is none of your concern, isn't it? I've known Vincent for 5 years. Know exactly what kind of man he is. He gets bored easily, especially with women who make things too easy for him. And you think you know me well enough to judge what's easy?" Sophia laughed. Sound like breaking glass. I know you're a sweet little architect who thought one night of passion meant happily ever after, but Vincent Sterling doesn't do love, darling. Does acquisition. Once he's acquired something, he moves on to the next target. The crisis deepens. Vincent's return to New York was delayed again when Blackstone Industries launched their hostile takeover attempt, catching the Sterling family off guard. The Singapore deal had fallen through despite his efforts. Leaving them vulnerable at exactly the wrong moment, Theodore Sterling summoned his son home immediately. "We're losing ground daily. Blackstone has convinced 3 major shareholders to sell, and they're targeting more. How much time do we have?" "Days, not weeks. The Bennett investment is still our only salvation, but rumors are spreading about problems in your marriage." Vincent's blood ran cold. "What kind of rumors? That your wife is unhappy with your extended absence? That the marriage is a sham? If the Bennett family loses confidence in our alliance, they'll pull their support." For the first time since their wedding, Vincent realized he might lose more than his company, might lose Rosalie. And the thought terrified him more than any business failure ever could. He called her immediately. But the conversation was stilted and painful. "I'm coming home tonight," he said. "To handle the business crisis? To see my wife? Which one of those is more important to you, Vincent?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Vincent knew the right answer, but his history made it hard to say the words. "I miss you," he said finally, "more than I thought possible." Missing someone and prioritizing them are different things. Before he could respond, she'd hung up, leaving him staring at his phone and wondering if he'd already lost the most important thing in his life. The homecoming Vincent's return to New York was met with chaos. Protesters outside Sterling headquarters demanded transparency about the takeover bid. Stock prices fluctuated wildly, and the business media speculated about the company's survival. But Vincent's first stop wasn't his office, it was Rosalie's architectural firm in Soho. He found her working late, alone in the converted warehouse space. She looked up when he entered, and the distance in her green eyes made his chest tight. "You came back. I said I would. You say a lot of things, Vincent." He approached her drafting table slowly, noting the new projects scattered across its surface. Community centers, affordable housing, buildings designed to serve people rather than profit margins. Tell me what I did wrong. Yes, Rosalie laughed bitterly. You left the morning after our wedding night and stayed away for 3 weeks. You chose your company over your wife. You made me feel like a fool for believing that what happened between us was real. It was real. It is real, is it? 'Cause from where I sit, it looks like you got what you needed from our arrangement and then went back to your real life. Vincent reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Rosalie, please, let me explain. Explain what? That business will always come. First, that I was naive to think one night could change the fundamental nature of our marriage. Explain that I fell in love with you, he said desperately, completely, hopelessly in love. It terrified me so much that I ran to the other side of the world to try to figure out what to do about it. Rosalie's composure finally cracked. Don't say things you don't mean just because your company is in trouble and you need the Bennett family investment. You think this is about money? Isn't everything with you? Vincent pulled out his phone, showing her a series of messages. Turned down 3 major deals while I was in Singapore because all I could think about was getting home to you. I walked out of the most important meeting of my career because I realized none of it mattered if I lost you. Rosalie read the messages, her eyes widening as she realized the extent of what he'd sacrificed. Vincent, I love you, Rosalie. Not because our families arranged it, not because it's good for business, but because you're the most incredible woman I've ever met. You're kind and brilliant and strong, and you make me want to be a better man. Then why did you leave? Because I've never felt this way about anyone, and I didn't know how to handle it. Because I'm used to controlling everything in my life, and what I feel for you is completely beyond my control. The choice their reunion was interrupted by James Hartwell's urgent call. Vincent, you need to get to the office immediately. Blackstone is calling for an emergency shareholders meeting. They're moving faster than we anticipated. At Sterling headquarters, chaos reigned. The boardroom was filled with worried executives and angry investors. Theodore Sterling looked older than Vincent had ever seen him, the weight of potential failure heavy on his shoulders. Gentlemen, Vincent addressed the room with quiet authority. I know you're concerned about the company's future. I know Blackstone has made attractive offers for your shares. But before you make any decisions, I want you to understand what Sterling Corp really represents. For the next hour, Vincent laid out his vision for the company's future. It's not just profit margins and market dominance, but sustainable technology that could change the world. He spoke with passion and conviction, reminding everyone why they'd believed in the Sterling vision in the first place. But even as he fought for his company, his heart was elsewhere. Through the boardroom's glass walls, he could see Rosalie in the lobby. Having followed him there despite their unresolved issues, the vote was close. But Sterling Corp survived the takeover attempt by the narrowest of margins. As the executives filed out, Theodore approached his son with something approaching pride. Well done, you saved the company. Hey, did I save what matters most? Vincent's eyes were on Rosalie, who stood uncertainly by the elevators. That's up to you, son. But I'll tell you this much. That woman came here to support you, even though you hurt her. It's not something you find every day. A declaration. Vincent found Rosalie on the building's rooftop garden, looking out over the Manhattan skyline. The city lights twinkled below them like earthbound stars, and the wind played with her dark hair. Why did you come? He asked softly. 'Cause despite everything, I couldn't stand the thought of you losing what you'd worked so hard to build. Even though I chose business over you, she turned to face him, tears glistening in her eyes. I lied earlier about not believing our wedding night was real. It was the most real thing that's ever happened to me, and that's what made your leaving hurt so much. I'm sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry for making you doubt what we have. What do we have, Vincent? Really? He stepped closer, cupping her face in his hands. We have love. Messy, complicated, completely unexpected love. We have a chance to build something real together, if you'll give me another shot. What about Sophia? What about your fear of commitment? Sophia is my past. A mistake I kept making because I was afraid of real intimacy. You're my future, Rosalie. You're everything I never knew I wanted, and your fear of commitment. By a bigger fear, the fear of losing you. I'd rather risk everything on love Then play it safe and end up alone. Rosalie searched his eyes, looking for any trace of deception. If I give you another chance, things have to be different. No more running away when things get intense. No more choosing business over us. No more running, he promised. From now on, we face everything together. Their kiss was soft at first, tentative, like they were learning each other all over again. But passion quickly flared between them. All the longing and hurt of their separation pouring into that single connection. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "Me home," Rosalie whispered against his lips. "Where's home?" "Wherever you are." The confrontation, their happiness, was short-lived. As they left the Sterling building together, Sophia was waiting by Vincent's car. Her red dress a slash of color against the night. "How touching," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. The little architect has come to comfort her. Husband in his hour of need. "Sophia, don't," Vincent warned, but she ignored him. "Did you tell her about us, Vincent? About how you called me 3 times while you were in Singapore, begging me to give you another chance?" Rosalie felt the blood drain from her face. "Is that true?" Vincent's silence was answer enough. The calls had happened, but not the way Sophia was describing them. He'd been drunk and lonely, missing Rosalie, desperately, and had made the mistake of calling his ex-girlfriend for comfort. "It's not what you think," he said finally. "Isn't it?" Sophia moved closer, her perfume overwhelming in the confined space. "Did you really think a few sweet words would make him forget 5 years of real love?" "That wasn't love," Vincent said firmly. "What we had was convenience and habit. With Rosalie, I have something real." "Real?" Sophia laughed. "You barely knew her when you married her. I know everything about you, Vincent. Your fears, your dreams, your deepest secrets." "You know the man I used to be," Vincent replied.
Oh.
"Rosalie knows the man I want to become." The simple truth of his words hit Sophia like a physical blow. She'd been counting on his old patterns, his fear of genuine intimacy, to bring him back. To her, "You'll regret this," she said, her mask finally slipping to reveal the calculating woman beneath. "When the novelty wears off, when she starts making demands you can't meet, you'll come back to me." "No," Vincent said with quiet certainty. "I won't." He took Rosalie's hand, leading her away from Sophia and toward their future together. The new. Beginning 6 months later, Vincent and Rosalie stood in the construction site of her latest project, a community center for underprivileged children in Brooklyn. The building was taking shape exactly as she'd envisioned it, a testament to architecture that served people rather than profit. "The Bennett Foundation wants to fund 3 more centers," Vincent told her, his arm wrapped around her waist as they watched the workers, using Sterling Corp resources. "Using our resources, I've been thinking about that conversation we had on our wedding night, about building something meaningful together." Rosalie turned in his arms, studying his face. The past months had changed him, softened some of the hard edges that had defined him for so long. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe it's time Sterling Corp did more than just accumulate wealth. Maybe it's time we used our resources to make a real difference." "Your father will never agree to that." Vincent smiled. Actually, he's the one who suggested it. Apparently, almost losing the company made him realize there are more important things than quarterly profits, such as legacy, family, love. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, and Rosalie's heart stopped. "Vincent, we're already married. We married for business reasons. This time, I want to marry you for love." Inside the box was a simple platinum band, elegant in its understated beauty, nothing like the ostentatious engagement ring their families had chosen. "Rosalie Bennett Sterling, will you marry me again? Not because our families demand it, not because it makes business sense, but because I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person." Tears streaming down her face, Rosalie nodded. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, beside her original wedding band, workers on the construction site began to cheer. Someone had been filming the proposal on their phone, and the romantic gesture quickly went viral on social media, but Vincent and Rosalie barely noticed the attention. They were too lost in each other, in the love that had grown from the most unlikely beginning into something strong enough to weather any storm. Their second wedding was everything their first had not been. Instead of a grand cathedral, they chose the rooftop garden, where they'd reconciled. Instead of 500 guests, they invited only family and close friends. Instead of designer gowns and expensive flowers, they focused on personal touches that reflected their true selves. Rosalie wore a simple white dress she'd designed herself, inspired by the clean lines of her architectural work. Vincent's speech was heartfelt and honest, acknowledging their difficult beginning while celebrating their hopeful future. "A year ago, I thought I knew what I wanted from life," he told their small gathering. "Success, power, control over my destiny. I never imagined that what I really needed was someone to share that destiny with. Someone who would challenge me to be better, love me despite my flaws, and show me that the best things in life can't be bought or planned they have. To be chosen every day with courage and faith." Alina, serving as Rosalie's maid of honor, wiped away tears as her sister exchanged new vows with the man who had become so much more than a business arrangement. Even Theodore Sterling, never known for his emotional displays, was moved by the genuine love evident between his son and daughter Law. As the sun set over Manhattan, Vincent and Rosalie danced to their song, while their loved ones celebrated around them. But they only had eyes for each other, lost in the miracle of finding true love in the most unexpected place. "Any regrets?" Vincent murmured against her ear as they swayed together. "Only that it took us so long to get here, and to take the long way around. Some of the best love stories do." "And what happens next in our love story?" Vincent spun her around, her laughter bright in the evening air. "Next, we write it together. One day, one choice, one act of love at a time." The epilogue 2 years later, the Sterling Bennett Community Foundation had built 12 centers across the country, providing education, health care, and hope to thousands of children. Vincent had stepped back from day-to-day operations at Sterling Corp., focusing instead on philanthropic work that gave his life new meaning. Rosalie's architectural firm had grown as well, specializing in sustainable, community-focused design. She'd won several awards for her innovative approach to urban planning. But her greatest pride came from seeing children play in the spaces she'd created. They'd bought a house in Connecticut, far from the Manhattan penthouses and Hampton estates where they'd grown up. It was a normal house on a normal street, chosen because they both craved the authenticity they'd missed in their privileged childhoods. "Are you happy?" Vincent asked, one evening as they sat on their front porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. Rosalie curled closer to him on the porch swing, her hand resting on the gentle curve of her belly where their first child grew. "Completely," she said. "Are you?" They sat in comfortable silence, thinking about the journey that had brought them together. An arranged marriage that had seemed like a prison had become the foundation of the greatest love either had ever known. "Do you think we would have found each other if our families hadn't interfered?" Rosalie asked. Vincent considered the question seriously. "Maybe not. We moved in different circles, had different priorities. But I like to think that somehow, some way, we would have found our way to each other. Fate, love, real love always finds a way." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they talked about their plans for the future. The foundation they wanted to expand, the children they hoped to raise, the love they would nurture for the rest of their lives. Their arranged marriage had become a love story for the ages, proof that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected beginnings, and that true love, once found, can overcome any obstacle. In the distance, the lights of New York City twinkled like earthbound stars. It's a reminder of the world they'd left behind in favor of something simpler and infinitely more precious. Had everything they'd never known they wanted, and it had all started with a deal that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with destiny.